3 Triple Z.
92.3
FM.
The following program is in English.
Thank you. You're tuned in to L'chaim, to Life, with your host Maurice Klein, who just happens to be my baby brother.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Shalom. Welcome to L'chaim, to Life, Jewish Life and More. You're tuned into L'chaim, to Life, Jewish Life and More, here on 92.3 FM, 3 Triple Z. Don't change that dial.
Israel National Radio presents Walter's World, the hard-hitting program that brings the news behind the news, with no-holds-barred interviews that get to the core of the matter, as well as on-site reports of current events. Hosted by the doyen of the airwaves, Israel National Radio's senior broadcaster, Walter Bingham.
Hello and welcome to the program. I am Walter Bingham.
No, you're not listening to Israel National Radio or J-Air. You're still listening to L'chaim, to Life, Jewish Life and More. You just heard the program introduction to Walter's World. Since 2004, a weekly radio magazine program on Israel National News. And since 2016, the Walter Bingham File on Israel News Talk Radio. And Walter's World being broadcast locally on J-Air, which is presented by the oldest working radio talk show host and oldest active journalist in the world at the age of 98 and 4 months, Walter Bingham. We are delighted to have the mensch himself join us on L'chaim, to Life. Walter, welcome to L'chaim, to Life, Jewish Life and More.
Thank you very much. What a great introduction.
Walter, I included the 4 months this time to the day. You may recall that when we last spoke on air 2 years ago, when you were 96, I left off the 4 months and you quickly added the 4 months in.
Actually, what I'm telling people is that I'm in my 99th year of life.
That's a simple way. Absolutely. Walter, 2 years on from our last interview, you are still broadcasting, still going strong, and still officially holding 2 Guinness World Records of the oldest working radio talk show host and the oldest active journalist in the world. Amazing, amazing Yasher Koyach to you. You're not slowing down, still presenting truthful, no fake news programs with quality interviews, and you even plan on jumping out of an aeroplane again soon, which you did at 95. Walter, what keeps your batteries charged? What keeps you going?
Well, hold on to your chair and be prepared. I don't eat garlic. I run a mile from garlic. And then people say, oh, well, garlic is good for you. And then I tell them, well, I've done all right without it. But really, I don't know. I'm blessed by Hashem with good genes, I guess. And that's probably the reason. And I eat what I like. I've been to the doctor yesterday because I'm preparing to go to Berlin to speak to schools, and I need insurance. And I had blood tests and all the kinds of tests, and they're all excellent. And my blood pressure, she says, is like a 20-year-old.
Good on you. So you got the all clear. You got the go-ahead. Walter, your life's journey is well documented, and I exhort our listeners to Google Walter Bingham. Born in Germany, you witnessed Kristallnacht 83 years ago. Your father was deported to Poland and died in the Warsaw Ghetto. You were separated from your mother, who put you on a train, the Kinder Transport, to England, an operation to save Jewish children in Germany by sending them to England, which you were eligible thanks to being active in Orthodox Zionist youth movements. You were emotionally reunited with your mother years later in Sweden. Growing up in Britain, you joined the army. You were awarded the Military Medal of Valor for bravery in the ambulance service, ferrying soldiers through some of the most harrowing battles in the war, and later awarded France's highest honour, the Légion d'honneur, for your participation in the Normandy landings. And you're also in military intelligence, where you interrogated the infamous von Ribbentrop, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Nazi Germany, later to be the first Nazi hung at the Nuremberg trials. What are your memories of this encounter with the senior Nazi von Ribbentrop?
Well, you've got it all. There's no need for me to say anything. My memories of Ribbentrop. He was caught in Hamburg, where I worked in counterintelligence. And I think he was in bed with a woman when they caught him. And our offices were the former Gauleitung, the former head office of the Nazi party in the whole area. And we took that over. And I had a small office in there. So when they brought him into me, he was in khaki. He was dressed in like British uniform without the signs, of course, because they took off his clothing in case he had a cyanide capsule, as some of those leaders had. And they thought that I would be interested to talk to him. It was a preliminary interview, and I was just interested in the Jewish angle. We sat, just he and I, in a very small office. He was unshaven, and we spoke in German and in English. I don't remember what we said in which language. And I said to him, "So, Herr Ribbentrop, what can you tell me about the final solution?" And he looked me in the eye, and in that tone, he said, "I didn't know anything about that. It was the Führer." Well, you see, I was a British intelligence officer and I had to be British. Stiff upper lip. I couldn't do anything. I could have choked him at that point, but I couldn't. All I could do was asking questions. So I said to him, "I see, but now I guess you heard about it. How did you find out?" And this man said to me, "I read it in the newspaper." Yeah. The British published one sheet of newspaper in German printed on both sides called Hamburger Nachrichtenblatt, and that is where he tried to tell me. And when he said that, I nearly fell off my chair. You see, I was 22, so he was a big shot. He tried to still play the big shot. And he thought, well, he's sitting next to some stupid little soldier here. He can tell him anything. Well, I'm sure you realize that if I was well trained, but if I hadn't known my job, I wouldn't be sitting in an office in the area security office of Hamburg and had my own office. So, but he didn't realize that. He thought he's talking to a silly little young boy. And then I thought, let's take a picture. I took out the camera. I had no instruction book. I didn't know how to. Unfortunately, we had no picture. Now, the interesting thing is, when he saw the camera, this man who really thought he was still it said, "Oh, is this for publicity? Do you mind if I have a shave first?" I thought I'd fall off the chair. And then I lost my cool and I said, "Sit down." Just like that.
He knew nothing.
He knew nothing.
That's where Hogan's Heroes, the TV series, the Schultz saying, "I know nothing."
He didn't know anything.
Back in England after the war, Walter, life took on many careers. You secured a degree in politics and philosophy, and later a postgraduate in political philosophy. You were in advertising, an entrepreneur, a handsome model, and an actor in many roles in TV and movies. As a wizard in 2 Harry Potter movies, just to name a couple.
I'm sorry to interrupt. And this is really the least of the thing. Everybody hears Harry Potter, says, "Harry Potter, can I touch you?" This was the least of my film. I'm rather more proud of a documentary where, within a documentary, I played Darwin in his house at his desk. That was far more.
Only an example. A wonderful career in journalism, radio, and more. Walter, please, let's talk about your journalism and radio journey. How did it all start, leading into well over 50 years of radio broadcasting in England and Israel, and also being a contributor to the Jerusalem Post and the Jerusalem Report?
Well, I once saw an advert. There was a Jewish station, which was on air every day, for somebody to man the telephones in a talking show, to say what you want to talk about, and we'll call you back, or something like that. It was on the phones for a talking show. And then they realized that I had a little bit more savvy than just being a telephonist, and called me on air here and there. That's how it actually started. And eventually I hosted that program, and I got to other programs on other stations. That's how it developed. Today, people have to go to university to learn journalism. I never went. In those days, you just picked it up, and that's how I got into it. And then I had my own programs. I hosted my own shows, and I was very successful in that.
Terrific. Walter, you became a pilot in 1968. the second most emotional moment of your life after reuniting with your mother was flying your personal plane over Jerusalem in 1971. There was a red sun, and it was truly Jerusalem Shel Zahav. Tears started flowing down your face, and you tried to steer the plane. Beautiful. You still have memories of that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was fantastic, and I think that once the skies will be open for private flying again over Jerusalem or helicopter trips, I recommend everybody to take a helicopter trip. There I was flying, as you said, over Jerusalem, very low, and seeing everything. And then I thought, all my life I prayed to Jerusalem. Even in the prayer after the meal, you talk about Jerusalem, and here I am sitting above Jerusalem and see everything. And it was really, as you described, it was in the afternoon and the sun was shining on the Judean hills, even on the Jordanian hills. Unforgettable.
A blessing. Walter, you always had a yearning to make Aliyah, not so your late wife, who sadly passed away in 1990. In 2004, at the age of 80, you made Aliyah to Israel to be near your only daughter, who had immigrated a few years before. Taking up residency in Israel, in Jerusalem, please guide us through that.
I was 80, but today they're coming at 90 and 90 plus. It's no big deal. All the time I lived in Jerusalem, I very easily integrated in society, because my daughter, normally it's very difficult for a new immigrant, for a new Ole, to find his way around. But I had the guidance of my daughter, who knew everything. I had broadcast on Israel National Radio from England, because they had asked me to talk about what I had to do in order to make Aliyah. So I had a 10-minute spot every week telling them how I was getting on. And when I arrived in Israel, they said, "You really here? Now, why don't you do another 3 or 4 weeks or something? Tell us how you integrate here, what you have to do when you are a new immigrant." And I can tell you that I could not say one bad word about Israel. There was all sorts of stories about Israel, that you have to have elbows to get on a bus and all those things. Nothing. I went to a supermarket and people were helpful. The people were wonderful. The representative of the Jewish Agency in London said, when you go to the Interior Ministry to get your documents, then take a thick book with you. Well, I got in and out in 30 minutes. And the people were so kind to me. And in my 10-minute spots, I couldn't say one bad word. My Hebrew is not very good. When you come with 80, it's difficult to remember a new language. I can go to the supermarket and buy bread and milk. That's as far as, and a few more words as far as my Hebrew goes.
Walter, you know 20th century Jewish history because you've lived it. You're often called upon as a guest speaker and at presentations. You most recently met with President Isaac Herzog at his private home, and 1 week later, when the Austrian ambassador presented his credentials, the president called you over and introduced you to him. Walter, I read that what drives you and keeps you going is the situation in Israel. You want to see the end of the problem in Israel. You want to see Israel secure. Yom HaShoah last week, Yom HaZikaron yesterday, and Israel's 74th Yom HaTzmaut tomorrow. Walter, how do you see Israel today? Your views of the unity government, please. And in particular, its handling of the recent Ramadan terrorism, culminating in 15 deaths, the most recent one being the slaughtering of a 23-year-old security guard last Friday, increasing the number of people we remembered and commemorated yesterday on Yom HaZikaron, the number approaching 24,060 beautiful souls. And how do you see the unity government?
I am no longer an unbiased reporter. I am now a commentator with a view, and my view is that we don't have the right government in Israel today. The prime minister is a puppet, and the puppet master is Mansour Abbas, his coalition partner, the Arab Party. And he seems to be doing everything that they want. Even now, the latest is that Mansour Abbas said they would leave the government unless we do what George wants us to do. That is no longer Jews going on the Temple Mount. So we are, in that respect, in some difficulty. Altogether, of course, Israel will never fade away. But I forecast today that the government will fall, I think, within the next month or so, because there must be a red line. Even Bennett, who is intent on keeping power at any cost, even he must have a red line to the demands of the Arab parties to remain in the coalition. If the Arab parties leave, and the government will fall.
Last week, we played the Bergen-Belsen survivors 5 days after the liberation of Bergen-Belsen singing the Hatikva on Shabbat. You knew the rabbi who at the end of the song said, Am Yisrael Chai, the children of Israel liveth. Walter, our local listeners can follow you on J-Air. We have an international audience. Where can the diaspora follow you?
Well, of course, it's my program, as you said, is Walter's World. It's on Israel National Radio. And I think you can get it by going to Israel National News /radio. And then you see Walter's World. Or you can find it via LinkedIn and via everything. Any platform seems to be relaying some of my programs. And if you go to Google, Walter Bingham, for the elder listeners, people ask me, how do you spell it? For the older listeners who knew who Bing Crosby was, I said Bingham like Bing Crosby, and ham that I don't eat. So that's Walter Bingham, and put the word Israel behind it. And contact me, and I have an email, which is walter.israelnationalradio@gmail.com. That's one of the emails, so you can reach me there. And if you listen to the program and you want to comment on it and send me an email, you will always get my personal reply.
Walter Bingham, the oldest correspondent in the world, it's been an absolute delight to touch base with you again. Many, many thanks for joining us on L'chaim, To Life, Jewish Life and More. Yasher Koyach with your very important work. Bis 120.
Oh, that's too short, Maurice. 120 is only tomorrow. My goodness me, I remember the Twin Towers. That was 21 years ago. It was like yesterday. No, where I daven, where I go to pray, they say 180. And when we get there, I will talk again. Thank you very much.
Right, you will find a recording of tonight's program at www.omni.fm/shows/L'chaim-2-life. That is L'chaim, LCHAIM-2-life. A selection of L'chaim podcasts are also available at J-Wire, the digital Jewish news daily for Australia and New Zealand. Or go to the Jewish Life page on the Social Blueprint Jewish Resources website. If you'd like to contact us here at L'chaim, our email is lchaim3zzz@gmail.com. For only $16, please consider becoming a member of the Jewish group here at 3ZZZ. And for seniors, it's just $11. Click on 3zzz.com.au. On the application form, please clearly indicate that you are joining the Jewish group. Many thanks again to Team L'chaim, Dr. George Banky, the executive producer, Dr. Maury Frankel, and Jeff Deegan.
So thank you for tuning in, and please join us again on L'chaim. My name is Maurice Klein. I'm Yisrael Chai, and peace.